That sounds shady, Tyrone. Stop it. Ne-
That stays in. That's 100% stays in.
I mean, all of this is staying in because I'm not bothered to edit it all down. There we go. I'm professional. Hello and welcome to the Process Podcast. I almost forgot what the name of the podcast was because it's really, really new, and it's so new that I don't have a proper intro. This is just Tyrone rambling. See, professional host. But what I can do as a host is introduce our guest today. Our guest for this podcast thing that we are doing is the wonderful Andie. Hello, Andie.
Hi, Tyrone. Thank you.
I feel like there was a hi, Tyrone, and someone was going to say some more words, but more words did not come out.
Brain, think.
Well,
I perform stage.
There you go. Well, how are you and Brain?
Good.
See, this is perfect for all those audio listeners. This is great for them. This is good content. But it's all about the content. And speaking of the content, our first bit of content that we'll be doing, see, there you go, segues, is going into Time Mudder. We'll talk about your past, present, and future in writing and performance. So let's now start off with the past. Go. I don't know why I teed up with a go, but I did. That's the thing now. Well, this is how it naturally flows perfectly.
Have a, like, dice rolling sound effect at that point, right?
Oh, don't, because I will actually look for sound effects and put them in there. This is not what... Cool. Past. Go.
I think there are obvious stages to it. Unislam is a big one that did shift later stuff into spoken word and performance stuff. But going right back to the roots of it all, I really love music very much. And the reason I started writing poetry is because I couldn't write a song. My hands don't obey me like I want them to, and I can't sing and play the guitar properly at the same time. We're working on that. But that was when I was like 14, 15. And so I couldn't do the shit I wanted to do. And when I started writing songs, I was like, oh, I'm writing all of the lyrics, all of the melody and rhythm is in my head. What am I actually writing? I've got this block of text. It's broken up into verses. Oh shit. Poetry does that. Let's do poetry. That's what I have to hand. Let's just write. And I very much used it as a form of expression, dealing with mental health issues around that time. A lot of fucking depression, a lot of anxiety, looking out at like blue skies and feeling nothing. I trivialize it now, but it was really fucking shit. And I know a lot of people use poetry for that. So I did that. I went through that space. And it was really helpful for me. There was a point where I looked at what I was doing a few years later. I think I was 18, 19. I tried to be in bands still. I tried to tie poetry into music and get other people who could write the music. It was kind of getting there.
Yeah.
But not in a way I wanted. So I was looking at my poetry and going, this is all... There's no happy poem. I don't have a happy poem. I don't have a joyous poem.
Who does have a happy poem?
I hope I do now. I hope I do now.
Oh no, poets and happiness is definitely not the best relationship, but it exists somewhere.
It should be.
There is some happiness there, but no, I guessed.
It was real dark. Was what I'm saying. It was real like, oh. And I was just going, I'm only writing when I feel sad. I'm only doing it when I'm trying to clear out something. What happens when I'm happy? Why don't I write when I'm happy? I started to just deliberately address that. And I would just write every morning, every day, like my way to work, just pop it on a blog. That still exists. It's interesting to look.
And the link will be below here.
No. Well,
I'm not being that person.
It could be. It's interesting. I think it's a fascinating thing. I want to dig back into it and dig through stuff, and I like that. I like seeing where I've come from. But the reason I really bring this up, this blog thing, is because there was a poet on WordPress, and we follow each other, a guy called Paul F. Lindsay. and I was writing a lot of strict form, strict meter. That's what I was. That's what I was raised in. That's what I knew. It came from the hymns. It came from the music. It came from all of that. It was poems I read. I was not reading anything contemporary. Nothing. Hadn't even touched E. Cummings yet. We had no concept of that. So this guy called Paul F. Lindsay was writing. He was like this 60-odd-year-old guy in America, and we just started chatting. And I really liked his work, but I couldn't get my head around why it was poetry, because it had no rhyme, it had no rhythm, it had no structure that I could sense, like just on the face of it, like counting and doing like the maths on it. It's free verse, of course, but he explained it to me, and I had to learn, and I understood that was then this is how everything he wrote was in free verse, and I really started an informal education in contemporary work through just this guy posting online and just having chats with him. He did have books released, a lot of them. He was actually pretty good, from what I remember. He did pass away a good few years ago. But yeah, he was a big influence on shifting my approach to accepting a wider view of work and what people could create and what people could put out there.
And there's definitely something in that whole thing of like so many. I think it's the whole. For all I can talk about button poetry and whatnot, I know so many poets that got into poetry because of button poetry, and seeing that there is something else out there. Like so many are taught in school, here is this way of poetry, the only poetry they're exposed to is that kind of stuff. Then when they see something different, it's like, no one's explained, this is new and different. I've not seen this, and can someone explain this to me? And like, there aren't the workshops or the YouTube explainer videos, which I'm not going to make. I'm not going to make a poetry explainer video. That's not my vibe. I mean,
I'm tempted to do a thing about like talking about performances on you. Like, yeah, that's an idea I have.
I will leave your Josie Alfords and your Loud Poets to have their form videos, which I love, and again, we'll happily shout out and do that. But I'm not doing a poetry explainer video. But like, there is that level of like a seeing. Oh, there's more to it than that, and it is always amusing when it comes to, because it can come in like a blog post, etc. Well, I guess now going on to the next part of this, the present side of things. What are you up to now? How would you describe yourself and your practice now? Because you're going to call it practice. That's a fun word.
Well, I suppose through doing Unislam and doing all that, I started to focus a lot more on the immediate, the audience, the actual energy and interaction that happens in that space at that time. Why is it so potent, and how can we play with it? Subsequently made things relatively hard to film. Yeah. But yeah, despite that, I just started digging into what power imbalances are going on in the room when someone steps on a stage. Is that something that should be broken? So I started looking at the power imbalances that were in a space when someone steps onto a stage, and what, like, why would you actually want to challenge that? What's the reason behind that? Not to tear it down, not to remove, but to just reduce a hierarchy to a level playing field and allow both to exist if people want it to. And I hadn't really seen anyone do it. I mean, obviously, you see comedy routines, you see musicians do it all the time. It's around in performing. So I thought, why aren't poets doing more crowd work? Why aren't they inviting people on stage? Why aren't they going into the audience? Why aren't they calling for voices? Why aren't they using that more than just here's a chorus, call and response, here's a line I want you to say? Why don't we give them more agency? What can we do within that space? And so I started coming up with concepts of, if I want the audience to interact as a community, if I want them to use the space as a performance area, what content needs to go with this to make it a whole piece, not just a gimmick, rather than just go, hey, it's fun time, let's play for 5 minutes while I'm on stage. What's the reason behind that? What words am I going to say? What title am I going to put to this to make it a little bit deeper, a little bit more thoughtful, that you can actually take something away from it and not just go, oh, that was fun for a bit. And we've had some interesting responses to it. The most interesting for me, personally, was actually at Rick Dove's book launch. Because most people in that space were poets of a certain nature and type. They were not an audience as such. And people around the edges were like there and present, but they weren't gonna be dragged in. It's not what you do when you're just buying a beer. Not what you're looking for. And it was really fascinating because I'd actually written it in that very space. This piece, the title of this poem is "The Background Noise." If people hadn't seen me perform it, I just basically get people to talk through the poem. Like I just perform it over the top of a noise. No one wanted to talk to each other.
Poets wanted to listen to the poem.
Yeah. So we did that, and I hope everyone got the Vine references. Just amuses me to put them in there.
It is. I mean, it's always that. This is a thing I always think of with, especially with like, you touched on something that I really like about the stuff you're doing, but also just the thing in poetry in general of like, I think we spend a lot of times, because of open mics as a whole another conversation about who attends an open mic, but we spend so much time being around other poets, performing to other poets. It is that mix of like how the stuff land with poets versus how does it land with audience, and poets will be respectful almost to a fault at times.
Yes.
And like, I know that whenever I perform to a non-poetry audience, that if you give them that license of like, you can make some noise, it's like, oh, I can? Well, I will then. And like, I think there's almost a weird thing of like, non-poets are more than willing to like, if you let me talk, I will talk. Because you ask me to do the things, I'll do the thing. Whereas poets like, no, but you're listening, but you're doing a performance, I need to listen to a performance. I think there's a bit there.
And how much of that relates into societal norms and constructs of a space and the rules we're given and told to obey, and this idea of you can't break that because that's, people will frown at you and that's not right. It's not good.
It's not right and proper.
No,
it's not how it's done.
And in I don't know if we're ready to do future stuff yet.
I mean, we can move into the future as well. Future's good.
Can we just like zip back and forth?
Oh, we've got I mean, there's level of we can just do it naturally because we're having a natural conversation. There's also the future Tyrone's editing this, so he can cut things and move things where he needs to do.
Thanks, future Tyrone. That's just for you.
And ones of people listening to the podcast.
We love him. Especially all the way up there in Antarctica. It's real nice to have you in. Real nice to have you in. I hope the science and studies are going well. Appreciate you.
But yeah, speaking on the future, then what is your future? Is it like in terms of like as a performer, as a writer, or in general of like, are you a person that's like, oh, here's a goal I want to try and achieve? Like, what are the future things?
Honestly, my goal for this year was to start getting booked for things and getting paid more for what I do. That kind of happened within the first like 2 months. So we're done. That's fine. That was achieved. Yeah, like it was just really lovely. I got booked for a couple of book launches. We got featured slots. Thank you very much. Had some good fun. Wrote some fresh stuff or new shit for them. Run some workshops, and just I think it's just keep rolling with that for a bit. And make sure that I'm getting time to reflect on them. Maybe put together a slightly longer show of some sort and description. Just structure something that's, can be put together either as a one-person piece or actually involves a couple of other casts and brings them in. Whether or not it will revolve specifically around performance poetry, I don't know. It's very easy to drift into theatre at that point.
I mean, there's a whole different conversation of where is it with the theatre, with the poetry shows and spoken word shows, where's that line between theatre and poetry, and how much of it is the spoken word thing, how much of it is theatre. And I think there's like with this thing of we're flowing here, you can flow in between this part spoken word, this part's not spoken word, and even spoken word shows don't have to be wall to wall. Every single line of dialogue I count as a spoken word show. Like, I think there's some flexibility there.
We can get some movement. It's why I really don't want you to ask me, like, how do I define spoken word? I'm the worst person.
Oh, I mean, that will come in a social clip later.
Yeah, no, thank you. I will give the dullest definition because I feel it should be the most open.
I mean, to be fair, like I still go back to my friend Katie Ailes' definition of spoken word because I think it's the easiest one that I've ever found of like spoken word as any form of writing that has been written with the intent to be performed or spoken. Like that's works for me. And like
words that are spoken.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Like obviously, when it comes to poetry, there's some level of like I almost view it as it's a genre of poetry, and then within that there are subgenres in poetry. Like you've got so many different types of spoken word artists that will do. Some are more theatrical, some are more hip hop, etc. You've got so many genres within a genre, etc.
Yeah.
So like, but it does sound like so you're saying your future is much more of like on the stage rather than the page, even though you do have the little pamphlets, etc. So far.
I mean,
both.
Yeah, I've just been putting together submissions for a pamphlet to be submitted places. We've got a concept, we've got an idea with it. I like it at the moment. Seems fun. We'll pop it out there. If it sticks, if it lands, then we'll continue that conversation with the page ongoing. Maybe try and book in some dates elsewhere. And speaking of elsewhere, this is sort of linking for what I wanted to bring into the future. I was wondering, like, with the whole social spacing of how people react to things, I need to see more international poetry spaces. Like I've not been to any. I've done some in England. I need to do more. Personally, I think I need to get to more. I need more variety. I need to see more people. See some more shit. Definitely need to get up to Scotland.
And whilst I am not saying I am Scottish, I do know a decent amount about the Scottish scene. I mean, I literally just came back from there a weekend ago doing loud stuff, and loud stuff took me to Aberdeen. So there's poetry all in Scotland, and we will get you there for sure at some point. That'll be a thing. Try and find the time to do an Edinburgh Fringe. That'll be whether even just as a even just as a performer, no, even just as an audience member, even as an audience member. That's the phrase.
It's actually
I'm a great host. It's great host.
Apparently, it's easier to go to Edinburgh Fringe as a performer than an audience member.
No comments. But there you go. There we go. See, timeline's done now. Now we can move on to other sections. Yeah. Now then, we are moving on to our next bit of content, because content is the key word, apparently. Content is king, as they say somewhere. Don't know who the they are.
Yeah.
People say it somewhere.
I feel like they, if they were non-binary, would not say king. Content is sovereign. God, I'm not even sure they'd be monarchists. Anyway, sorry.
That's going to be a whole nother thing in the back of my head now. I don't know what the phrasing is going to be now. And that's... Oh, cool.
Content fills volume.
Next bit of content is let's talk about. This is a segment. I say it as if it's a regular thing. This is a segment where we just talk about a particular topic in the creative scene. We'll try and stick to that topic, but I make no promises or guarantees. You've seen the level of hosting we've got here. There is no guarantee that this topic will be something we stick to, but nevertheless. You kind of were talking about it in the whole like present side of things and like how your writing is the idea of performance and the whole thing of playing around with performance and like what we are doing. So like let's start off with what would you describe as your poetry performance style, if you will.
Wow. My poetry performance style.
Or at least a level of, to someone, let's say someone in Antarctica has listened to this podcast for the first time and they've not seen you perform, how would you describe that experience? Because I feel like the word would be experience.
I feel like, see, now I want to use images that relate to Antarctica.
It's going to be a really random tangent of a podcast now.
Just look out on that ice floe field, sort of that's drifting dangerously close nearby your base. I'm gonna stop with that.
Keep going.
No, oh no. You see that blinking light in the distance that you think is your rescue ship? That's my performance style. Make of that what you will.
Again, I mean, this is a podcast primarily for poets, and they will completely understand that, or at least say they understand that, and just nod and clap along.
Yeah,
that sounds shady. I won't stop it.
That stays in. That's 100% stays.
I mean, all of this is staying in because I'm not bothered to edit it all down. There we go. I'm professional. But yes, performance.
You mean I can say anything right now? It's just going to stay?
Oh,
I think that's much more damaging for me. That'd be fine.
But what are your views on the performance in general? Like, obviously, so much of this is seen in it being spoken word, if we're calling that, it's performing poetry. So, like, what are your views just in general on poetry and performance and how it has been?
How it's been. I'm going to start with a gripe.
Oh, bring it. Bring it.
I don't like seeing people not use a mic correctly, especially if I know that they've been several times to poetry nights, just generally, and they've still not tried to figure out how to do it. Like, it's nerve-wracking. It makes you anxious, yes. But you have an opportunity every time you go up to record yourself, to try something different, to review that recording and see how you sound. Try that out. Test it. Just give it a go. There's a way to fix that. And if you're not doing it, and if you're constantly bumping into the mic and constantly doing this, and you're not getting the sound right, and people are going, they can't hear you, it affects your whole performance, it affects your poem. It's not revealing you to the standard that you should be at. You deserve for yourself to have good mic control. Saying all that, God, I hope I have good mic control. I don't know.
It's one of my ongoing thoughts of performing in general and like open mics and whatnot, and that balance between I understand and fully sympathize, empathize, whatever word you want to go for, with the idea that so many people doing this is a hobby, this is a thing they're doing for fun, and I'm here for that. I know that obviously I do a lot of things professionally with poetry, but I still see it in many ways as a hobby for me. This is not what I want to do as my full-time professional job, but obviously I take it seriously. It's not like I'm
but like, slack on it.
But yeah, like again, I understand that people see it as a hobby. I fully get that. But in that same time and same token, the level of the moment you are getting on stage, you're performing. No matter how basic and open mic it is, you are still performing. Perform that, and that's not doesn't mean learn the words in advance. Doesn't mean you always do that. Again, I don't mind if you write your poem the minute before you got on stage, but if you are going on stage, perform it.
Yeah,
that needs to be a
those
performance.
are sometimes my favorite performances to both do and see. I think they're brilliant. I think that's raw. I think it's fantastic. I love that element of open mics, that rawness. I would actually extend the performance time slightly longer than just like, oh, you're getting on stage. It's the moment your name is announced. You are performing from that moment. People are expecting you. Some people will be turning around. Some people know who you are. Your friends will be looking at you. You are performing. You have a mask on of some kind. Get it on quick. Sort it out. Go.
Yeah, like, a lot of it is like it's how you carry yourself, and like I will. A little bit of a tangent on what you were going, but like I will always say one of my favorite ever poetry performances of when I saw Shane Koizan do a show at the Rich Mix, and part of what I loved about his performance was level of he knows how heavy his work is, and in doing that he will therefore add in dad jokes and other stuff in the part of his sets. The thing of like he knows that in this 20 minutes, whilst you're here for my poetry, I've got 20 minutes to perform to you. My poetry as a performance is too much. Not too much, but like is heavy. Therefore, my performance will be being this up and down person, knowing I will give you all these in the ups, like different. I can do words, different peaks and valleys, and all of this, and knowing that it's not going to all be intense.
Well, I feel like it's about performing in any sense is varying emotion. And to be a good writer and a good performer, you need to have a balance and control of the emotion of your audience. You don't really want to hammer home one emotion the entire time. It's the beauty we have in poetry. We're not like comedy. We don't have to like. The idea is you're not aiming for the laugh every time. You have the range. Use the range, whether it comes in anecdotes or in sets of poems themselves. And I think that's a fantastic example of, your poetry is set in a certain way. You're writing what you want for that aim. Balance it in other spaces. You have control of that. You can do that. And it's very important to give people that range and that movement. It helps them out. Helps them enjoy the other moments even more.
And I think that's definitely a thing for me of like, whilst I'm nowhere near a guru and all this kind of stuff, I definitely know that whenever I'm watching like people do longer sets or whatever, part of my, I like them as a performer is, yes, the poems, obviously, but it's also how are they handling themselves before the poem, after the poem, and it's like, oh no, they're a performer, they're good at this, and like, that is the X factor, if you will, a lot of the time of like, oh no, you know what you're doing here. Okay, cool. Then you're not just going up and doing, and like, obviously some people can go up and just perform the poem well, but there'll be that awkward bit beforehand and whatnot. And it's like, this is not as comfortable as it could be, and what the poem is great, but give me the whole performance.
Has there been a moment, an open mic, like or on the scene in the last few years, where you've actually been able to witness someone go from, they've got the content, it's the stuff around it they need to work on, and then they have stepped up?
I can't think of anyone that's gone from like in that specific example of having the content but not the stage presence yet or whatever. I have not seen that, so to speak, more of people that have crafted the stage presence even more. Like, I think, not a recent one, but one of my favourites, this is going for an old school throwback for me, but my friend Shoshana Anderson, I think, is my favourite example of figuring out the stage presence. And like, she will probably not admit it or say it, like she would not own it in that sense, but like in a similar way to Shane Koizen, but what show did quite well was she is a very self-deprecating person, but in a almost humorous way on stage. And it just works so well, and I feel there's almost a level of, she doubled down on it, and then would hit you with these freaking powerful poems of like, I'm just gonna say the poem's gonna be good, and like, almost that thing of like, there was almost the fun of how self-deprecating she is, to the level of like, this is almost like, not quite dry humor, but this level of, this is actually kind of just really funny. And then here's some fucking powerful, deep poetry, and like seeing how she kept the kind of doubling down that was level of, I know you are not the most confident, but level of, you kind of know what you're doing a little bit, and you're really actually doing that more, and it's actually really, really endearing and fun to watch you do that.
You've absolutely made that into a character. Yeah. That you're running that, and the audience don't feel uncomfortable watching that because they can understand it's a character.
And I think actually was a good thing to talk on. I think of like, you were mentioning the masks, and like, I think there is that thing of sometimes people do need to have characters on the stage. Like, because there's a balance with poetry and performing and all this stuff of like, I think poetry and spoken word in particular, so many people are looking for authenticity, but they're also not, because it's like, you're performing the authenticity, it's still performative.
Yeah.
And like, how do you grapple with that?
I think you can still create a character within authenticity. It's the same way someone who's writing a novel will create characters and use them as foils to present something that is authentic and unique to, not unique, authentic to the human experience. You're doing the same thing with poetry. You are just the character that is producing and speaking the lines. And sometimes it's all based off your own life. Sometimes it's completely imagined. And you have to trust the audience that they're going to suspend their disbelief and just go, that's a character, but it still is a real person speaking to me, and I'm going to accept that as a real person. If myths can become myths, if people can get so obsessed with TV show characters, if people can get so obsessed with book characters, why not get obsessed with the poetical characters we have on stages performing to us? It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff.
Well, then, to put you on a spot now, 2 levels of putting you on a spot. I'll go for the kinder one first.
Thank you.
A level of like for you, then like we talked about it in an arguably general term so far. For you, are there any specifics of this makes a good performance? What are the specific things that for you is like that's a good performance to me?
Trying to remember visual examples in my head where I think it's a lot to do with the feeling you get. I think you want to feel comfortable with the person that's going on stage, and I think you want to be able to just sit in that poem without it being broken, without the spell being broken. If people do, I think if you're going to do an aside to an audience, it needs to be natural. It does not have to be pre-planned, but it can help to have something pre-planned to say if you want to do that. If you're gonna do it, just do it. Get it done. You're absolutely allowed to stumble over your words. That's fine. That won't bother people generally. Don't apologize at all, I think. Unless it desperately warrants an apology. Like you've knocked over the microphone. Like that, maybe apologize then. Just be like, oh, my bad. Pick it up. But generally, don't apologize for being anxious. Don't apologize for stuttering. Don't apologize that you might forget some words. Fuck it, forget the words. Doesn't matter. It's fine. That's not what makes the performance. I think you just go up there, you step on the stage, one step at a time. You step up to the mic, say your name, say the piece, title of the piece. You just go. But everything after that point absolutely changes on the content. Like people have a way of speaking, and it will accentuate the words they're bringing across. People have certain hand gestures they're doing, and now I'm making hand gestures. I do this is now basically me speaking meta about my own. This is a performance right now. Here I am. That's an aside. Did I do it well? Oh, I don't know. Should I apologize? Whoa, probably not. Andy told me not to. Getting in my own head. People do these things as they speak. Allow yourself to do that. That's fine. A lot of the time they will naturally accentuate the words you're saying. Let them be. Relax. Let the tension go a bit. It's okay. Don't stress too much about not being able to see people in the audience. It's fine. It's chill. And then say thank you and step back from the mic at the end.
I mean, I will challenge only one thing, and that's for the fun of it. Like,
do
you always have to say thank you?
You
always have to say thank you?
No. No, you don't. But I think it's nice to have some kind of thankful gesture at some point. I mean, like even if it's just like a little bow, a little tuck, a little step back, and then like a little nod.
I find it amusing because like, so whilst so many audiences are trained to listen to a poem, there's also the thing of like, I don't know, it's finished, and like I think the thank you has become I'm done now. You can clap now. It's definitely been a kind of a cue for that, sheet for that kind of thing, and I think it is that fun of like, I always am here for like anyone who doesn't do a thank you, but obviously there's an awkward thing when you see like everyone did a thank you and they've kept talking and started doing another poem. It's like, oh shit, we're in poem 2, and like a level of like that's good and bad, and like some level of like the fact that I didn't know your poem finished is sometimes good, sometimes bad. I don't know.
I think some people will do it deliberately because they don't know, like they don't want to handle the applause. Then like they don't want it, and it could throw them off. Like, especially if they're trying to memorize pieces and they're just trying to hold it. It's not good or bad. I prefer a step back in between each piece because I think that just is a visual cue. I prefer a visual cue over a verbal one. Partly because I think it makes people have to watch me. Don't know if that's egotistical.
I mean, we're poets getting on stage. The level of we're wanting to be seen. Like, I think ego is fine and a valid part of that.
I think it's space. I think it's space for ego. Most people's ego, anyway. Depends how big the venue is. But yeah, like I think rushing into a second poem. Slow down. Enjoy what you've just done. For you, not almost forget the audience at that point. Just appreciate that you've just done that. Also, if you're trying to stick to 5 minutes dead on, Don't. I would err on the side of caution. Give your first poem the attention it deserves. Don't rush it. I think if you're trying to squish 2 poems in because they're both 2 minutes 30 seconds, you're not going to perform either well. So you're not going to do it right.
It's always better to do 1 poem well than do 2 poems badly.
Yep, 100%.
And now to probably put you on the hot seat then, who are some of your favourite performers, whether you've seen them in person or online?
Okay, first one, Rachel Long. Because at my first uni exam 2020, we had all these other brilliant people, poets performing. And Rachel Long just speaks like this, and just is the only one to like a book and just sort of start flicking through. But it didn't feel out of control. It didn't feel too nervous, didn't feel too anxious. It felt perfectly her. That
section was for our ASMR listeners.
Professional. That is on the Preem subscription. I will be reading a poem later in that voice. I will not. You're not missing out, I think. Don't worry. You didn't miss access to that. It's fine. How quickly can I derail this podcast into something else?
That was me derailing it. Of like, here is your wonderful write-up, not write, but it's a wonderful talk-up of Rachel Long. And here's me go, I've got a great ASMR joke for after this. like I'm waiting for your moment to pause here.
Yeah.
You pause now. I can say it now. Yeah. Cool. But now we can go back to putting you on the hot seat of other performers.
We love it. We love when we do writing scripts in our heads. And we're like, yes, excellent. Then the dialogue ends.
That is me, 100%. That is me hosting.
Yeah.
It's my vibe when I host.
I'm allowed to include you in this, right?
I was tempted to go for don't include people in the room, but you can do it. It's fine.
Excellent. I'll include you.
You will allow it.
For fairness, I'll include myself. I like to see myself perform. I think it's great. I really enjoy, especially with what he's doing right now, Francis Machibi. His work around silence right now, like we've talked about it a bit. Me and him, and it's been wonderful to see his journey on that and see him develop it. And he has step by step, like just developed such a control over it. And it's just been fascinating to watch him learn that and process through it all and go through the process of it all. That's been really, really fascinating.
Future Tyrone / this is also gives me a deadline to when to edit this by. Francis will be featuring at Process in July with Robin Lamble.
Woo!
And see, I said that out loud now. I like to make sure this podcast is out before that. So that was a good plug. There's Tyrone's timings there. I don't know what the date is of that one because I don't have my phone's over there. I think it's the 25th of July. It's the last Tuesday of the month. But yes, Francis and his silence will be there. That's
Francis and his silence.
That's selling the feature set. Francis and his not talking will be what needs you to bring you to come down to Process.
Now all we need is Robert Land to bring the cabaret.
Oh god,
that's all I want. That's what I want. I did see Robert Land perform a poem. I think it was a poetry climate slam.
Yes.
That could Nancy host. I like to see Nancy perform. I love to see Nancy host. That is fantastic. The bit he does when someone's not there to perform on a slot and he's got absent. It every time kills me every time. Without fail. Silly. I love it so much. Rob Landell did a poem that just referenced birds to, I think, basically it was just 90s and 2000s hip-hop songs.
Yes.
And that was it. And it was just so well layered and so well done, and it had a slideshow. It was fantastic. Yeah, I loved that very much. Run through my brain of performers I can list poets.
For pressure and timings, I could say 2 more poets. Give me 2 more poets for performers. Putting it down to that.
I'm also trying to think of reasons. That's what's killing me. I think I'm gonna have to go with Jasmine Gardesi. do you need a reason? The Control, and they are doing a thing that. Who else is doing the thing? Go see the thing. You should always go and see that thing they do.
I will unapologetically say that Jasmine Gardosi is my favourite performer on the scene right now of any of the performers, of any performance style and type, etc. And I'll even extend that to the work that they are creating in general. And I know some of it obviously is some level of backed by different organisations, but like there was the during lockdown when they did the poem on the roller coaster, which was a whole vibe. There was also, I forgot who it was with, but the poem about labels and what we are saying, and that video for that with the subtitles actively playing a part of it, and a thing of like, you know the space you are in, and like Gaz is one of my favourite performers, and knowing that in this space I can play around with these things, etc. And like one of the first poems I think I saw of Jasmine Gardosi's was a love story between two women, and not to be, but so it was a love story where each of the people involved in it both used the she pronoun, and it was so fun of so fun of them constantly using she so often, but also you understood exactly what was happening, but you know that they're talking about different people each time and the way they do it, and it's just like so well done in this level of like, there aren't people that are using this space and scene the way you are and properly doing that. So yeah,
like properly binding concept and content. Like we love it. We'll love to see it. One more. I'm trying desperately to think of someone who uses stage. I mean, I feel like that's an easy one actually. Just to pop that in there. I mean, the repeat beat poet. I always feel comfortable. Always feel safe. I laugh. I think. It gets me fired up. It puts me in a frame of mind that I like. There's a wonderful control there, and just a genuineness on and off stage, and it all ties through into then what he performs.
We talked about performance. We did that.
We did it.
Content done. Now we move on to more content, and that more content will be taking it a little bit slower as we do some slow fire questions. Yes, we are now moving on to slow fire questions. So, for anyone who's seen the channel before, seen the content that I keep putting out there, they might be familiar with the quick fire questions game that I play, where I would give poets 3 minutes to answer as many questions as they can. I've got a list of 100 questions, and it's basically just fun to see people under pressure trying to answer some of these questions. And it's always been, it's a fun thing, and I think there needs to be more fun videos in the world, but also sometimes there are some wonderful answers that I'd love to pick on more and explore more, but that's not the content I made. So here's a modified content where I can pick on that stuff, if you will. I will warn you in advance in the level of these 100 questions. Some of them are poetry related, some of them are not. For the way we'll be playing this, I will go till I feel there's a good ending point, if you will. But basically, pick a random number between 1 and 100. We'll talk on that answer. So yeah, pick a number between 1 and 100. I'll ask the question. You answer it. We'll see how the back and forth goes. Some of these are more serious than others, as is my vibe with a lot of the things I do. So let's see how this works, because I explained that. That was explained well. Sure, cool.
Leave your reviews in the comments.
Get in the comments.
Subscribe.
And now Tyrone puts a graphic there, or subscribe. I say graphic there. This is also an audio podcast, so what I'm doing now is pointless to some of the audio listeners here. There we go.
For those of you in Antarctica, it very much sounds like the white noise outside your space.
Number between 1 and 100.
We'll go with my age, 29.
Quite thick. In which case, your first question is: do you have a TV in your room?
No. God, no. I've got a computer.
Fair play.
That's doubles as that.
Well, like, expanding on this, and so like, are you much of a TV person? I say TV. Are you much of a
watcher
TV shows person and all of that?
No. I just about get through some films. I'm so sorry, Tyrone.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Like, So that you are much more of the whole like going to shows and that vibe.
If I'm gonna watch a TV show, I'm gonna watch it with someone. Like we're gonna go through it together. So I don't really sit down and watch them on my own. You might like I'm not fussed. Like they just feel a bit long.
But films.
Films are easier. Like I don't have to commit to a series, a season.
I fully get that.
It's just it. A film. I also, I've got my comfort films. I'll dip back to those. Those are nice. But TV in room is never going to happen for me. It's just not. Just doesn't work. It's not feasible. The temptation just have it on and just fall asleep to it is too much.
I mean, that's literally how I fall asleep. I need sound to fall asleep to.
This is it. I've got my phone, but I might put on a podcast. I might just put on like a short YouTube clip, something. The sound of something just sends me off, but then it's not the blue light just constantly playing onto me.
TV with sleep timer is definitely a good thing.
Oh, okay, maybe I can get down with that. What I'm learning is I need the right tech. Once that's in place, then I'll be into TV and everything.
Give me another number, please.
52.
52. Let's see what that question is. What's your favorite word?
Oh, the one that immediately came to mind was serendipity. It sounds good. It's right.
It's right.
Little word joke for you.
Good. Win. Again,
that was much more a quick fire question than a slow one.
See, and people say poetry is this nerdy thing that's like, I say we're clearly not nerdy. We're accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Accessibility, yay!
Don't clip that. It's not the right tone.
There's Tyrone's GIF accessibility.
Oh no.
Because I'm not making GIFs of this. I already make enough bits of content. I'm not in the GIF making.
But you mean I can't go on Instagram and then search up Tyrone Lewis in my GIF bar search and get GIFs?
Like I honestly used to make GIFs like back in the day, but that was when I was on Tumblr. I was making GIFs, and I was that person that would download TV shows and make GIFs. Like I had my Glee GIFs, my other shows that I watched GIFs, etc.
I never watched Glee.
It was okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I like musicals. It was fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I was in my school's Glee club.
Ooh.
I did that, so I lived it. I felt like I never really had to watch it. And I watched a very Potter musical, which was essentially watching Glee.
That was, yeah. I mean, the Darren Criss of it all.
Yeah.
Yes. Another number, please. Before we go into Darren Criss love affair.
Oh dear, we could talk about Starkid for a while. George Best, 7.
Loving the football. Oh, a simple question for you. Favorite poet?
So bad that me came to mind.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but it's not particularly valid. It's not very nice.
I mean, you're allowed to be your own favorite person and therefore favorite poet.
Yeah, I just don't feel like it gives across like the right image that I'm going for.
It's not quite my brand.
Yeah, it's not a brand. Can we just like cut that? Thank you.
I mean, we're not, as we've established, we're not cutting anything.
Not cutting. This is staying in.
Like, this is going to be the easiest podcast to edit because I'm not doing any editing.
Okay, other than so unfair. Okay, I'm just gonna go with someone whose work I feel I would pick up right now and would feel comfortable and happy reading pretty much any of their pieces. I think Andrew Macmillan, specifically like Pandemonium, I could pick up and just go through any point in that. Very content.
Again, I'm still going for my Jasmine. I do see they're still my favourite, just in general.
Yes. Yes. Solid. Love it.
Another number, please.
100.
Or on a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
I don't believe in rating coolness. I think that's a fad. It's very uncool.
A level of if you have to rate yourself, then like, are you really that cool? If you have to say yeah.
Well, it's like what is coolness is a concept that is again society. Oh, here we go again. I don't know, 5 average level.
The whole like cool is the concept, the thing of like in this in this scene area, cool as hell. In that scene, they don't find me cool at all, and like there's different areas and vibes of being cool, and like here I'm a god, and here no one gives a crap about me. Like it's the whole vanity of the poetry thing of like, I like being able to go to poetry events and people going like, oh my god, it's Tyrone, we know you, and it's like, that feels really, really cool. And
it is nice, and that is good to be enjoyed and appreciated, especially after the work you've done. Like that's good shit.
I mean, there's that, but also level of like, I think one of my coolest moments in that sense was going to an after work drinks event thing, whatever. We were in the Tesco's nearby work, and someone came up to me in the Tesco's nearby work and like, you're a poet, aren't you? And therefore, the fact that I got that while surrounded by a couple of work colleagues was, oh shit, you actually do a thing that's like, we know you did the performing thing, but no, people know you from the performing thing.
Do the performing thing. That's fucking nice.
So that was a wonderfully cool moment. Yes. Another number, please.
1.
Poetry slams or open mics?
Oh, open mics.
Why?
Every time. Poetry slams feel contrived.
I mean, they literally are. But I love them.
There you go. I do not. I feel like people feel like they have to bring a certain kind of poem, and I think it limits it too much. But equally, like, there's 100% of space for them, and they should exist. 100% they should exist. I have performed in, I mean, technically Unislam counts. I don't see it as that. I always performed what I wanted to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Actually, I have any slam. Whoops. That's what kind of performer I am. I do what the fuck I want.
Yeah.
To answer the earlier question. But yeah, like the stuff that gets performed at slams feels very. People have sat down and gone, I'm going to write this for a slam, or they've written it and gone, that is a slam poem I perform at slam. And I don't like that way of approaching creation and work. It doesn't sit right with me. So I haven't really engaged with it as much. So maybe it's unfair for me to even answer this question. But that's my current opinion.
I mean, slams are always. I find slams are fascinating. When almost going back to what you were saying earlier with getting feedback, like, whilst obviously a lot of slams are not judged by professional poets all the time, there is that instant feedback of this is what the audience think of your poem, which I always value and like. And for as much as I love an open mic night, my biggest issue with open mic nights is it does at times feel like poets are talking to other poets. Whereas slams, whilst contrived, and I don't think the best example of poetry all the time, there is a bit more consideration for the audience in a slam, which I do really appreciate. But then with that, it is almost a level of almost too much catering to the audience at times and too much awareness. And I think that there should be a middle ground somewhere, but I do find that as an interesting balance.
I think there's definitely a way to do it, and I think it's just to do with like a conversation round table kind of approach, something like this. But maybe slams just bring forward a different kind of performer, and it's just a bit more like showpersonship, entertainer kind of thing, and that's that space. That's that.
It's that whole thing of like, especially the type of poems that win slams, and this is from someone who wins. That was going to be the vainest sentence I've said in this podcast.
Go on, finish it.
Wins a lot of slams.
There you go.
But like, as someone who has won slams in the past, etc., there is that vibe of some of what the audience go like. I know that my stuff works well in slams in a level of things that tend to work well in slams, and part of why they do get the negative rap on them is talking about a key issue is going to work well in a slam because people are going to be like, I agree with you, and therefore, because I agree with you, it's a good poem. And it's like, no, that's agreement does not therefore make it good.
Yep.
But at the same time, and I think the thing I definitely have come to terms with and accepted, especially when it's judged by audience, a level of when the poet goes up and does their poem about this is the time I came out as a queer person, and it is very, you're hitting all of the cliches and all of the stereotypes and all of the images that I've heard before. There is a part of me that goes, that poem is shit. But for that audience member who is come to their second poetry night and heard this poem, they love it.
It's the one.
And it is that thing of audience versus poets and whatnot, and who are we doing this for, who is appreciating it sometimes.
Yeah. And that is it. It comes down to who are we doing it for. I was actually thinking today on the way over, like, of writing new stuff. And one of my ways of approaching writing new stuff is to think, who do I want to write for? And sometimes that's just like a close friend, or it's someone I've met once or twice and gone, I feel like I can write to you. I can reach out, or it's a community of people or something like that. And I think it is a valid way of beginning a poem to, I'm going to completely disagree with myself from earlier. Absolutely valid to, if you want to begin a poem with like, hey, I'd like to write a poem that would appeal to someone who would attend a slam as an audience member. I would much rather see people writing poems than and performing poems than having every night perfect for me as a person.
Oh, yeah.
I'd much rather see that.
Well, yeah, the whole
so
thing
if you want to
like,
write a slam poem, fucking go write a slam poem. Do it.
That whole thing of like, part of the issue with slams is the level of there's not much else on the scene is the issue. Like, yeah, we've got open mics, we've got slams, and it's pretty much it. I know it's not entirely.
No. The other things are spattered around and occasional.
Another number, please. We'll do, let's say, 3 more numbers. Yeah, let's
3.
Sure. Number 3 is favorite spoken word night.
I say this to people in private all the time. This is not. It's process. It's my favorite night. Easy.
Well, in a breakdown, I guess, not to flatter the ego, but it's a vaguely technical breakdown. This, what for you makes a good poetry night?
So bad. The hosts have to be good at what they're doing. It's got to be there, and it is. I think it helps that there are 2 of you. I think that helps a lot, because it's just the general thing of like, if someone's not quite feeling on their A game, the other person is, or if you're both feeling a bit down, actually both of you somehow manage to lift each other up. It's not weighted completely on someone else, one person's shoulders. You have this duo who get to bounce back and forth, and that's fun. That's great to watch. Duo comedy acts have always been a staple. Let's make poetry duo acts a staple too. It just makes sense. You love seeing people interact. That's what you get. I really like the space. The venue's good. I think the venue themselves have put a lot of effort into their space, and they've leveled it up throughout the time we've been in there as audience people. And everything they've added has added to my experience as an attendee. And yeah, like I go in and I know people who work there, and that's comforting. That's nice. It's become very comfortable. That definitely helps it. That I've been to it a bunch. I like the area it's in. It feels nice. It feels good. It's by the water. That's very nice.
Even if West Ham Stadium.
I do actually often look across that Astro pitch that's right there and just go, I want to play football on that pitch, like on that Astro pitch. And apparently Stonewall do some of their training there. And a couple of the teams that I play for, a couple of my queer teams, shout out Queer Space and Star, up the Rats. They know people like through Stonewall, and so they've done, I think Star have done some training stuff there as well alongside Stonewall. So that I might be able to play there at some point and complete my little sides of the river, the sides of the canal. It's not really a river. Sides of the canal, be on either side of it, which would be good. And that will make it even more one of my favourite places to go.
Obviously, thank you. But like, I do always find like what makes a good night interesting, especially with an open mic night, because so much of an open mic night is not in the control of the hosts. Like, so much of it is the poets that come, etc. And it's the thing of like, cool, well, how do I make it good? And there is some level of a luck to it, but it is establishing a community and that kind of trust thing. And like, I kind of do appreciate nights that have more than one person involved in it, and not that nights that just one by one person on their own are bad or anything like that. No. But like, there is it helps when you've got someone to bounce off of, because also it means that like anything is, I think collaborative stuff is good, because it means that it's not just one dominant voice that's saying I am the awful with this all. I say as a one-man band so much of my stuff. But it is nice to have some people to work with and bounce off of. And like, as you were saying, the whole like comedy duo thing, like I think there's, again, I feel in the art and poetry, there is sometimes a level of we must keep reinventing the wheel vibes. And it's like the straight man and the chaotic one or whatever has been a staple for years because it works. And like, there's a level of some things just work. And whilst there's not a conversation that goes in beforehand of like, I'm going to be the straight man, you're going to be the chaotic one, it's good to have a balancing.
Are you the straight man every night?
Yes. like it's,
that has several layers of questions.
Oh, I mean, so much. Like I obviously used to run Boomerang before that, and I don't think it was said out loud in that kind of a way. I thought, as chaotic as I feel like I am in my day-to-day life and whatnot, I'm surprisingly, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a surprisingly good producer at times, and like, so when it comes to like some level of by force, some level of naturally, when it came to Boomerang and even with Process, a level of, well, I like being in charge of doing the open mic list, like sorting out the order of it, and vague level of running that and making sure things run to time to a degree, etc. And like, not that others don't contribute over that, but like I fall into that role, and I say fall into that, some level of fall into it, some level of I step into that role, mix of both, and it therefore means I often play the straight man a lot, on a level of like, I feel that I'm in a not bad place at a level of, let me worry about how this night runs on the nitty-gritty side of it, which means you can then have the fun with it almost as a bit of the vibe sometimes. And like with Boomerang, for example, a level of, I just took over doing all the Facebook posting, like, I'll make the events, you guys do all the other stuff, it's fine, I can do that. I think that's just it's the vibe that I feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, if you find a system that works, why are you gonna fuck with that? Why would you?
2 more.
Oh boy. George Best Other number 11.
Oh. What is your brand?
Like, is there a brand I buy a lot? Or
what is your
like
brand?
My brand as a person?
I leave these open. What is your brand? You can answer however you choose to. I
don't really indulge in brands on either way. I don't subscribe to it. We don't like consumerism. We don't like capitalism. I don't like commodifying.
We don't like being brands.
Nope. I don't like commodifying myself in any shape or form. I find it really, really hard to even write a bio. Just let me be me. Let me turn up. And I will do the shit. I'll probably do it very chaotically. And I can't tell you what you're going to get until I show up. That doesn't just count towards performing. I think that counts towards my day-to-day life. That's just how it is.
I mean, the argument is that not a brand in of itself?
Yep, probably. Probably. But I think it's just not something I try and really think about as marketing. It's something I completely try and avoid.
Well, almost on that then, like, to make it vaguely as a serious question, like, as poets do try to some level of make a career out of this, I'm not saying that that's necessarily what you all aren't doing, but as poets do make a career out of this, there is that line between wanting to be authentic and all that kind of stuff, but also a level of, we've got to, I don't say have to, but there's playing the game sometimes.
Yeah.
And part of that playing the game is knowing, like, where do I fit in this game? What am I offering that either no one else is offering, therefore I can cover that niche, or, well, if that person's doing it, I'd work well with that person. So, like, I guess some branding ways in that sense, like, is that ever a consideration for you?
I think it's the same thing, the same way I view networking. I hate networking as a term.
Oh yeah,
I think it's destructive. I think it ruins the point of what it is. And I think I probably feel the same way about branding.
I mean, to latch onto that, I think I feel the same way about the word content. I know I keep using it, and it hopefully it comes across of some level of an ironic way of saying it, but this is the game we're playing.
Yep. And I think it's any of those kind of business and marketing terms. I don't enjoy them. I don't like using them. Do I think about things in terms of if I'm involved with the project, yes, I go through my brain and I think of like who would be good for this and what connections do I have. Yes, I do that. So do I do branding? Do I approach that at all? Do I think about it? Yes, in a sense. But I try and remove it from a capitalist mindset and approach of listing skills and commodifying it, or some kind of labeling of this is what I do, I can phrase it in this way, here is a nice quote that exemplifies my work. This is why you should hire me and let me work with you, I will be so professional. Blah, 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 blah. I don't like that. If someone was to say yes to my application, if that was like an application thing I sent across, if someone said yes to that, I don't know if I want to work with them, because I don't think we'd be on the same viewpoint. It makes me very wary when that kind of stuff comes up. I prefer just ticking along, doing what I'm doing, and showing what I can do, and then people will just point and be like, yes, you, that thing, come do it here, and I will go and do it there. But with discussion, obviously. But we'll go and do the thing over there. So it's less about putting myself out there rather than I am existing.
Last number.
What numbers haven't you had?
I mean, it's any numbers between 1 and 100, so you've got a fair few numbers to go through.
But I mean, like, what numbers?
I mean, I have done quickfire questions so many times that I have gone through all these questions at least once, in some way, shape, or form, but haven't done it on the podcast at least once.
Okay, so there's at least that you've had answers to all of them in some capacity.
In some capacity, yes.
Awesome, that's good. I just don't like numbers being left out. We want to cover them all, get all the questions in.
I mean, that's almost my first initial thought there was that reminds me of John Green-isms. And is it Paper Towns where the lead character is like, I don't really like capitalization, it makes all the other letters feel a bit bad.
No, I hate it too. I hate it. I was talking about this in setting up this pamphlet thing. I don't like not capitalizing the little words like at or a and stuff. Capitalize them all. If you're going to capitalize. Do it. Why? Why not? Also, stupid bloody thing about double negatives coming from like some 1800 pamphlet on grammar. It's just stuck, and it's really fucking annoying. Anyway, number 79.
What do you want to be remembered for?
I don't care if people think of me and smile. That's nice.
And on that note, we'll end the podcast.
There we go.
I mean, honestly, it's a serious level of like as much as I'm saying slow fire question, we don't have to go into depth every single answer, and that's a fine one. And with that, timing-wise, yeah, sure, timing-wise, I know how time works. That's now the arbitrary end of the podcast, as Tyrone says. For anyone who's watching it, thank you for watching it. For anyone who's listening to it, thank you for listening to it. For those in Antarctica, you get a special prize of being shouted out a few times during this episode. Hope you feel good about that.
Check your scanners now.
Oh, check your email. We'll have sent you something. I know you didn't give us your email, but we found it because we work like... Ending podcast. I can wrap it up properly. Like, thank you for being on the podcast, Andy.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely.
Cool. Your camera is there. Tell people where they can find you if you want them. If you want to be found.
If I want to be found,
yeah.
You can either find me on a trip up to Antarctica because I feel like I owe people there now. To see what the purchasing's like up there. Find me Instagram at andievo.andyroo. Spell it. At ANDIVO.ANDIEROO. Yeah. Drop me a line. That's fine. Be lovely.
Sure. I have been Tyrone Lewis. This has been the Process Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, like, I'll find an intro at some point. I'll find a sign out at some point. Who knows? Maybe I won't. Maybe the whole bit will be that we never find an outro. Nevertheless, this is the outro. Bye.